Well, much of the Ukraine controversy is centered around politics and the concern that the president used the power of his office to advance his own interests. But that's not the only side to this story. The Associated Press reports that a group of individuals with ties to the president were active in Ukraine and, quote, their aims were profit, not politics. The circle of businessmen and Republican donors touted connections to Giuliani and Trump while trying to install new management at the top of Ukraine's massive state gas company. Michael Biesecker is a national investigative reporter for the AP, and he contributed to that report and joins me now from Washington. So, Michael, who were these Trump associates and how did they plan to profit off Ukraine?
Well, there are a lot of people involved in this story, but two key individuals are a pair of Florida businessmen named Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman. They've been in the news recently because they were the people who were acting as Rudy Giuliani's fixers in the Ukraine, arranging meetings with Ukrainian prosecutors to try to get them to reopen an investigation into Joe Biden and his son Hunter's business dealings in the Ukraine. Our reporting shows that they were also part of an effort to pursue energy deals in the Ukraine involving the state-owned energy firm Naftogaz. At a conference in Houston, an energy conference in March, Mr. Parnas and Mr. Fruman were at a dinner with another prominent GOP donor named Harry Sargent III. He is a very wealthy oil magnate, and they pitched essentially a plan to a Ukrainian official to replace the management at Naftogaz with people who would be more friendly to doing exclusive deals with Trump allies. So at the same time, they were pursuing an investigation of the Bidens over gas deals or purported wrongdoing involving gas deals. They themselves were pursuing using political influence to set up deals for themselves.
So was the decision to remove U.S. Ambassador Maria Yanovich tied to all of the facilitating for this Ukrainian gas deal?
Our reporting doesn't really show that. What we do know is that at Mr. Parnas, at both the March meeting in Houston and a follow-up meeting with Rudy Giuliani at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, according to our sourcing of people who are very familiar with the details of both meetings, at both they raised the fact that Mr. Trump would be replacing the Ukrainian ambassador with someone more amenable to their business pursuits, and that would happen. 2 months later, she was removed and recalled to Washington.
We also know that Secretary of Energy Rick Perry yesterday confirmed he wanted President Trump to call the president of Ukraine to discuss energy issues. Here's what he had to say.
Absolutely. I asked the president multiple times, Mr. President, we think it is in the United States and in Ukraine's best interest that you and the president of Ukraine have conversations, that you discuss the options that are there.
So what has Rick Perry's role been in all of this?
Well, John Dowd, who is President Trump's former lawyer for the Russia probe, is now representing Mr. Parnas and Mr. Fruman. And according to Mr. Dowd, he says that they were trying to pursue a legitimate business deal in the Ukraine, and that as part of that, they approached Secretary Perry to get him on board and help facilitate it. Now, Mr. Perry, for his part, denies any wrongdoing. He says essentially that he was just trying to pursue what is American government policy regarding promoting American business interest overseas. But when he did go to Ukraine, Mr. Perry did specifically ask that the supervisory board of this same company, Naftogaz, the state-run oil and gas company, be replaced. And he provided a list of potential replacements. On that list are a GOP donor from Texas, with which he's been long acquainted and he describes as a personal friend. So at the same time or after these discussions took place in Houston about replacing the management at Naftogaz, you then have the United States Energy Secretary pursuing kind of a parallel path.
And you also report, Michael, that Ambassador Gordon Sondland was in that meeting with Perry, and Sondland was blocked from testifying today. What are the questions that you think he could potentially clear up about the nature of that meeting?
Well, you know, Mr. Perry tries to present this as being all above board, that he wasn't pursuing anyone's personal business interest. He was just pursuing the business interest of the United States in concert with U.S. policy. Obviously, the people who were in that room, our source that was in that room, remembers it differently. And Ambassador Sondland, and as well as others, Americans who were in that room, could provide their accounts of what was heard and what was said, and that could be interesting.
All right, Michael Biesecker, I want to thank you very much for joining us with this report.
Thank you for having me.